What is up everybody, Shwazy here, and in today's video I'm going to explain why the 2024 Nissan Ariya is a very underrated electric vehicle. Now the reason I say this is underrated is because everybody talks about the Tesla Model Y, the Ford Mustang Mach E, the Kia EV6, but not enough people bring up the Nissan Ariya, and it's a very solid choice if you're in the market for an electric crossover. Also, Nissan incentivizes these things quite a bit. We'll talk more on that later on in the video. So what exactly is the Ariya? Well, it is Nissan's only all-electric crossover, which is a little surprising because Nissan was one of the very first to the electric vehicle market back in 2010 when they introduced the Nissan Leaf. Well, it took them another 10 years before they introduced the Ariya, and then another 2 years after that until these ones actually started hitting dealer lots in late 2022. The vehicle standing behind me is the 2024 model year. We'll talk about some of the cool features of this vehicle. So first off, let's discuss the exterior styling. Now this particular vehicle I'm reviewing today is the top of the line trim level. It's the Platinum Plus with the E-Force all-wheel drive, but a lot of the exterior features I show off in today's video are standard on every single trim level. Now this color is the deep ocean blue pearl, and you have the two-tone black diamond pearl roof. So it looks pretty striking. I like this in the blue, the red, and there's even a gold copper color. And personally, I think this vehicle looks a little bit better than the Tesla Model Y. It's a very upscale, luxurious looking exterior. Starting off with the front end, you do have LED headlights and LED daytime running lights as standard. And this is a pretty large light strip that goes all the way down, especially at night. This thing glows, and when you're driving down the road, it just illuminates this front section really well. It looks very futuristic. And this is Nissan's updated logo, and this actually lights up at night as well. In fact, when you approach this vehicle with the key in your pocket, the front lights will turn on, and my particular vehicle has a lighting package where it will actually have underglow underneath the vehicle. That's kind of something they've taken from Infiniti products as well, and you've even got the Nissan logo on the ground. But the front grille isn't just a piece of black plastic. Of course, you don't need a real grille because this is an electric vehicle. It actually has a little bit of a design to it. They've got these little shapes to kind of simulate a front grille. It looks very futuristic, very different from your conventional Nissan front end. Typically you have a V-motion front grille, and this is kind of the electric interpretation of that for Nissan products. And I would argue this is probably the best looking Nissan product that they offer, and it does look really nice, very upscale. Down here you do have front parking sensors, active aero over here, and you've got fog lights as standard on every single trim level as well. You also have this little air inlet over here that kind of goes across the side of the wheels. Now coming across the side of the vehicle, one thing I noticed washing this car is that the front hood is actually pretty short, and they do this on purpose to give you a little bit more cargo room inside of the cabin. Now the length of this vehicle is only about 182.9 inches long, which is compact crossover territory. In fact, the Buick Envista I recently reviewed had just about the same amount of length. But the advantage to this being an electric platform where you have the batteries down low and the motors front and back is you have a lot more interior cargo volume. So the interior is more like a Nissan Murano, whereas the exterior is more like a compact crossover, which makes this very maneuverable in tight parking spots or city traffic. We'll talk more on that when we get behind the wheel. Now talking about the wheels and tires, this particular vehicle comes with the 235, 55, 19-inch wheels, but you can get optional 20-inch rims on the Ariya, and I think they look pretty good overall. I wish they were more blacked out to kind of match the exterior styling, but there are different wheel and tire configurations. This one also has a lot of plastic to be able to give you a little bit of range efficiency because you do get a little bit of drag from large spoke wheels. Now I also like how you have this little fender flare that pops out across the side. It's black plastic, but it gives it a little bit of width on the side of the vehicle. Moving further back, you have more blacked out pieces for your mirror caps, and like I said, this is the two-tone configuration where you have the blacked out roof and the rest of the vehicle is that deep ocean blue color. You do have body painted door handles with sensors located over here to lock and unlock the vehicle. And then down here you have some more black plastic, but it almost angles up. So as you can see, it gives it kind of an optical illusion where the front end looks almost squattier than the rear end because you have this piece of black plastic that wraps around the side skirt. I like how they've added these little design touches to make it look more futuristic. Coming across the rear, you also have another black plastic fender flare, And then the rear end looks just as striking as the front end. You do have LED taillights, of course, as standard on every single trim level. And you have this large light bar that extends all the way across the passenger to the driver's side, with Nissan actually inside of the taillight housing itself. I also like how moving up above you, you kind of have this dual air inlet for your rear spoiler, which is integrated into the liftgate itself. You've also got the two antennas over here, but this adds a little bit to aerodynamics, and it also just looks stylistically cool. Your third brake light is integrated up here as well, and you still have a windshield wiper on the rear windshield as well. You also have this kind of secondary spoiler down here at the bottom. But what are your thoughts on the rear end? I think it looks really cool looking. Now, as I touched on earlier, this is the Platinum E-Force all-wheel drive, but there are various trim levels, including the base Engage, you've got the Venture, Evolve, Empower, and then this one being the Platinum. Now, you can tell it's an E-Force because they've actually darkened out some of these chrome pieces that go around the window surround. So on some of the other trim levels that are not all-wheel drive, this will be a lighter chrome material or color. So that's one of the ways you can tell the difference. But I think there's just a lot of trim levels, so depending on what your needs are, there's going to be a Nissan Ariya for you. All right, jumping under the hood of the Nissan Ariya, this is where I have a little bit of a complaint. First off, I should mention there's no hood struts here. You still have this hood prop that you have to use to hold the hood open, which is a little bit odd considering the price point. But at the same time, I'm surprised Nissan even lets you open this front hood, because there's really no reason to. Everything under here is part of the electric powertrain. Nissan kind of had to move a couple parts forward to be able to give you a little bit more room on the inside, and that's very welcome. The complaint I have actually has to do with the fact that there is no type of front trunk storage. Even some of the Korean competitors like Hyundai and Kia, they offer a little bit of space over here, and then Tesla, of course, offers a pretty big front trunk. And I'm a little surprised they haven't done that here. But at the same time, you do have some pretty good cargo room on the inside and plenty of storage space, which we'll talk about in just a second. Now let's talk about the powertrain and some of the range efficiency. Now, Nissan offers a variety of different trim and battery options. This particular one, being the Platinum Plus, with the E-Force all-wheel drive, has the larger battery pack. In fact, if it has the plus after the name, that means it has the 87 kilowatt hour usable battery. However, Nissan also offers a smaller, more affordable 62 kilowatt hour battery. Now, unlike the Leaf, the battery is liquid cooled, which means better range in hot and cold temperatures. Now, the range on this particular one, with all the bells and whistles, is about 267 miles. And the vehicle's been telling me on the dash that I'm getting about 3 miles per kilowatt hour, which equates to about 261 miles. So I would say the 267 is pretty accurate for this vehicle. Now, you can get upwards of 304 miles if you choose the Venture Plus trim with the front wheel drive. And then if you choose the smaller battery pack, the lowest amount of range you can get is 205 miles on the Engage E-Force all-wheel drive. So you still have the all-wheel drive benefit, but you have the smaller battery pack, so that's why your range is impacted. Now, in terms of charging this vehicle, this one still comes with the CCS charging port. Thankfully, it's not the CHAdeMO that you found on the Nissan Leaf. This is kind of the most standard version, but going forward, Nissan will be integrated the NACS Tesla charging port, which allows you to go into a Tesla supercharger and plug and play. However, in the meantime, you are going to get an adapter to be able to still plug into Tesla superchargers using this CCS adapter. Now, the peak charging rate of the Ariya is about 130 kilowatts, which is a little bit of a complaint of mine because some of the Korean competitors and even the US competitors offer quite a bit larger charging rate. We're talking in the 200s. So 130 is kind of on the lower end. But Nissan still says you can get from 10 to 80% in just about 40 minutes. Now, if you're charging at home using your 240 volt adapter and you're wanting to convert from AC to DC, your onboard charger is about 7.2 kilowatts, which means if you're charging at home from 0 to 100%, it'll take just about 12 or 13 hours. Now, in terms of power output here, this one being the top of the line trim level, it is the most powerful one. It is 389 horsepower and 442 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 is a pretty brisk 4.8 seconds, but it feels even quicker than that on the inside. Just like every electric vehicle, you got that instant torque. And honestly, you don't need anything quicker than this. It's that very effortless acceleration, but it would be pretty cool to see like a Nismo version of this, because that would maybe add a little bit more to the brand and people would want to have an Ariya because you aspire to have the performance version. Now, the Platinum trim level, which is the one behind me, is only offered in all-wheel drive, but like I mentioned earlier, you can get the Ariya with front-wheel drive as well if you don't need that all-weather capability. All right, next up, let's talk about the pricing of every single trim level. Now, the base Ariya starts at the Engage front-wheel drive, and that one's starting price is just under $40,000. Now, you can get all-wheel drive on pretty much every single trim level, but it's about a $4,000 option. Now, stepping up to this top-of-the-line Platinum trim level is just around $54,000, and this particular vehicle standing behind me, because of the blue paint color and some of that underglow lighting, this one tops out around 57 grand. However, Nissan is heavily incentivizing these vehicles. Right now, you can get 0% APR for 72 months. And according to Nissan's website, you can lease a 2023 Engage front-wheel drive for $149 a month. That's an absolute insane price. That's like cheaper than a cell phone bill, and would be really amazing if you're able to get one and if the dealerships honor it. Okay, next up, let's jump inside and talk about the interior. Now, there are some cool features here that I haven't seen in other vehicles. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, now jumping inside of the Ariya, the first thing you'll notice on this Platinum trim level is this blue interior. This is something that kind of stunned me the very first time I saw it. It's a really handsome, upscale looking interior, unlike any other Nissan I've seen before. Now, starting off with the door panel, you'll notice you do have soft touch leather material all throughout the top. You even got this little ambient lighting strip that extends all the way across onto the dashboard and all the way onto the passenger side. I'll throw up some footage of what it looks like at night, but it's very faint but nice looking. Kind of gives it a nice upscale interior. You do have this blue suede material all across the door panel, which is really refreshing. It's different than pretty much any other car I've seen, definitely any other EV. This, unfortunately, is a hard touch plastic material, but it's not very noticeable, which is nice. You also have this aluminum door handle and your memory functionality for your seats. Now, moving below that is another feature I haven't seen in any other car, and it is what Nissan calls Kamiko-inspired design. And Kamiko is a type of Japanese woodworking where you have kind of complex geometric shapes, and they've integrated that into the Ariya. And this is actually backlit when you're driving down the road. I'll throw up some footage of what it looks like when you're driving at night, but it looks really good. And you've got an extension of that located over here in the footwell. In fact, you can see it lit up a little bit better down there, but we'll jump to that a little bit later. Now, moving further down the door panel, you do have this blue elbow rest over here with some piano black switches that you find on some other more premium Nissan products. You do have automatic window controls, mirror controls, as well as fold-in mirrors. One complaint I will have about this elbow rest is it feels a little bit lower than it should be, especially when you're sitting in these seats. It's almost like your thigh is a little bit taller than this elbow rest, but that's kind of a minor complaint and might be particular to my situation. Down below that is some hard touch plastic, which is to be expected. And then you have a decent sized storage compartment with a little slot over here for a water bottle. Now, this being the Platinum Plus trim level, you've got a 10-speaker Bose audio system, and it's located all throughout the A-pillar and on the dashboard as well, and it sounds pretty good overall. Now, moving towards these seats, first off, I do like to mention that you have this kick plate over here that says E-Force, and then these are premium Napa leather seats, and the design is really nice. The headrest is a little bit on the firmer side, but other than that, these are what Nissan calls the zero gravity seats, and in all honesty, they're pretty comfortable. I can't say they're the most comfortable seats I've sat in, but they are decent for longer road trips. Now, in terms of the power functionality here, you have 8-way power adjustable seats with 4-way lumbar support, and these are heated and ventilated on this Platinum trim level, along with a heated steering wheel. Now, what's interesting here is the heated steering wheel and the heated seats come standard on even the base trim level, so it's nice that even the most affordable Ariya comes packed with quite a bit of features. Now let's jump inside and talk about what's going on here. Jumping inside of the driver's seat, there's quite a bit to discuss here, so let's get started. First off, with the steering wheel, this is leather wrapped. You have some perforated leather here, along with some contrast copper stitching. In fact, you'll notice a lot of copper accents on the interior of this vehicle, which makes it feel a little bit more upscale and premium. You do have a flat bottom steering wheel, along with this aluminum bezel over here, and then your updated Nissan logo with some kind of harder touch plastic material, but it's forgivable because honestly, this is the nicest steering wheel I've seen inside a Nissan product. Now, on the left-hand side, you do have your volume controls along with this little roller knob to go through various settings on your gauge cluster, along with some buttons for the different menus. You have your Seek Track button and a quick access button that I'll show off in just a moment. On the right-hand side is where you have your Nissan ProPilot Assist, which is your suite of adaptive cruise control settings, and then you can set the speed over here. You can change lanes, the distance indicator, along with your voice activation. Now, this vehicle is the first Nissan to come with Nissan ProPilot Assist 2.0, which is hands-free driving on select highways. So once you see a blue icon light up on the dashboard, that's when you'll know that you can actually take your hands off the steering wheel and this vehicle will steer itself on the highway. You'll actually use these sensors over here to make sure you're paying attention so you can't be distracted and doing stuff in the passenger seat. But that way, as long as you're looking at the road, this vehicle will steer itself, and we'll show off what that looks like when we get on the highway. Now, moving behind the steering wheel, you do have your automatic rain sensing windshield wiper stock along with your headlight controls and your turn signal stock. And then I should also mention this is a power adjustable tilt and telescopic steering wheel. Next up, I want to discuss this 12.3-inch all-digital instrument gauge cluster display. It's really vibrant, really nice. It's something that Nissan has been starting to roll out in other vehicles, but the Ariya is definitely one of the first to have it. And there's quite a bit of functionality built in here. So not only can you adjust some of your typical gauge cluster controls, but if you want to adjust the ambient lighting, along with the brightness of the lighting over here and some of your adaptive cruise control settings, that's all built into this gauge cluster display. So this kind of becomes the primary focal point for all driver-oriented items. Now, I should also mention that you have your adaptive cruise control setting, your audio controls, your navigation, along with your torque split. You've also got your typical odometer settings, and you've got a home menu where you could see your compass. Now, you can actually change what this gauge cluster looks like by pushing this button over here on the steering wheel and changing your meter view, and it makes it a little bit more minimalistic and kind of more modern looking. But I personally like the traditional gauge cluster display where you have your power output on the left-hand side and your speedometer on the right. Now, before we move on to this center infotainment screen, I do want to talk a little bit more about the design here. So first off, to the left of the steering wheel, you have a little bit of this wood grain dash, which feels really nice. It's got a texture to it. Your air vent has some more of that copper, bronze, aluminum piping, which makes it feel just really upscale. And then more of this blue suede that extends behind the infotainment screen all the way onto the passenger side, and some of that same bronze aluminum that extends below that for your air vents. It has this kind of Japanese minimalistic design, but it's very upscale. Moving below this air vent, you have a lot of your quick access buttons for your safety features, so you can turn on your steering assist, your auto hold. You can also turn off charging and then open up your lift gate. Now, above the dashboard, I should mention this is all hard touch plastic, which is a little bit unfortunate, but you're never going to look at that when you're driving down the road, so I think it's forgivable. Also, this particular vehicle comes with the head-up display, and it's actually a standard feature on the base trim and all the all-wheel drive trim levels. And it's got some pretty useful information, especially when you have the adaptive cruise control active. It will have different colors on here, or show you what's in your blind spot, so it's more useful than just your typical speedometer. It's got some pretty nice features built into the head-up display. Now, moving towards this 12.3-inch infotainment screen, I should mention this kind of has this cool design to it where it's a little bit sunken in over here and then a little bit pushed out, because, you know, when you're driving, you want this to be a little bit more out of the way so that you can see more of the road, versus here you want this closer to you so you can reach it with your fingers. Also, a quick neat feature I want to show you. So if you have your navigation feature open like I do right now, if you swipe with two fingers, it'll actually open up your navigation menu over here in the middle. So it's kind of a neat party trick. Talking about the software here, this runs the latest software I reviewed in the Nissan Altima about a year and a half ago, and it's pretty nice. So you do have your quick access buttons over here on the left-hand side, and then kind of a widget style home menu where you have different size screens, and it's pretty quick to react. I can't say it's the quickest system, but it's definitely quicker than the majority of Nissan products I've reviewed in the past, especially those that run on the older software. I also like this particular menu where it's kind of under your EV app, and this is where it'll show you exactly how far you can drive with your current driving range. So it pulls up where I'm at right now, and right now I'm actually charging the vehicle, so this little map just expanded, and it's a nice feature if you're planning on doing a little road trip and you're wondering, will I make it to my destination? Well, this is a good way to just visually see how far your driving range is at. Then you can jump to your energy usage, which tells you exactly how efficient you're driving, and there's just a lot of baked in information here that's very easy to access. You can, of course, look up different charging points. What I will say is it's not the most intuitive in terms of finding you the quickest charger. So it's got different colors that I think signify how fast the charging is, but even clicking on this info tab, it won't tell you exactly how quick the charger is. It just says whether it is a fast charger, but it doesn't actually tell you if it's, 100 kilowatts or 150 or whatnot. So you kind of have to use a separate app to be able to access that information. I wish that was a little bit better, but overall it's a very intuitive screen, and this does have wireless Apple CarPlay, but unfortunately only wired Android Auto at this time. I don't get why Nissan does that. Just do wireless for both. It just makes things so much easier. You do have a climate control button because you have kind of limited climate control settings in physical buttons. Most of it is baked into this touchscreen, including, unfortunately, your heated steering wheel and your heated and ventilated seats. So you actually have to open up this menu to be able to turn those on. If you're in your home menu, you can click this quick access button at the bottom and you can adjust your temperature, your heated seats and your ventilated seats, but it's not as quick as actually pushing a button on the dashboard. So just keep that in mind if you don't like touchscreen controls for those types of functionality. Now you also have a 360-degree camera here. So by pushing this quick access button on the left-hand side, it will pull up your camera settings. And it's a pretty decent camera. It's better than some other Nissan and even Infiniti products I've reviewed. It's a little bit more higher quality. You can even see some of the details over here in the parking spot I'm in. But unfortunately, you don't have any type of 360 mode or even different zones. So you can push that button again and it'll show your front wheel, but that's pretty much where the functionality stops. Nonetheless, it is nice to have a bird's eye view, which is probably the most important and most usable version of the 360 camera. Moving down below that, I did already talk about this vent stack, but I do want to show off this power button and this volume button. It feels really good. It's kind of wrapped in piano black plastic, but it's got some nice resistance to it. Your hazards are kind of integrated into here. And then this is kind of a secret button. You have a Seek Track button located as part of this air vent aluminum bezel. And then this is probably one of my favorite parts of this vehicle, although it's probably not the most useful when you're actually trying to turn up and turn down the temperature, but this wood dash panel has these touch sensitive controls kind of backlit within them, and it's pretty nice. So you can tap these buttons to turn up the temperature, you can tap it to turn it down, and as you can see, you know, it works, but I wish it was a little bit more intuitive. It does have a haptic feedback control, so it vibrates a little bit when you touch it. But at the same time, you know, when you're quickly trying to turn up and down the temperature, I found that the fastest way is to actually pull up this little sub menu and actually use this slider button over here, if it works, rather than actually use the buttons located over here. You do have your window defrosters over here, your fan speed, you can turn on the automatic climate control, and you can turn on the air recirculation, and then there's the controls for the passenger side. So I like the idea in theory, but in usability purposes, it's just quicker to use the touchscreen itself. Now, moving over to the passenger side, you do have a little glove compartment that kind of slides out. It's got this button located over here. Now, there is a little hidden feature here, kind of James Bond-like, and by pushing this button located over here on your center arm console, you'll pull out this secret slot, which you can use for a variety of different things. So first off, you can rest probably a pretty light laptop on here and kind of do your work while you're charging, or you can open this up and use this as a storage compartment where you can put random goodies and then close it back up out of plain sight. So if you maybe have some sort of expensive item in the car, you might want to hide it in here so that people don't just look inside your vehicle and decide to break in because you have something expensive. You also have this little design built in over here on the top right. It's just an Easter egg that Nissan decided to integrate. And then by holding this button down again, you can hide it. So it reminds me something out of a movie. Now, talking about this center arm console, there's quite a bit to discuss here too. So first off, you see these buttons located over here, and you can actually move this center arm console forward and backwards depending on your comfort positions. And you can also open up a little bit more space in this footwell. Now, I do like this as flat loading floor, makes it easier to just store some different items and just gives you a little bit more roominess inside the vehicle. Down here, you have your cigarette style power outlet. You have 2 USB ports, a little slot where you can put your smartphone, and then you can even wrap your cables around this section over here. A little bit more of that same Kamiko design that you find on the door panel, except this doesn't light up. And then other than that, it's just a pretty large space. Now, moving this further forward, I want to talk about what's going on at the top here. So this is your gear selector. It does have some ambient lighting located around it. And then this is an extension of that same wood material that you find on the dashboard. Opening this up, you have 2 hidden cup holders. And then over here is another design piece that you find that's similar to what's over here on the dashboard. And that is these backlit buttons that are touch sensitive with haptic feedback control. So the E-step button is actually your regen. And then this is your auto park functionality. So this vehicle can actually park itself if it finds a parking spot. This is how you open and close that storage compartment. And then your different drive modes are located over here where you can cycle through Eco, Sport, Standard, and Snow. Now this also has a little bit of haptic feedback control. So as you push it, you feel a little bit of resistance. It's almost like you're pushing a button. It's kind of interesting how they integrated that here. And then this vehicle also comes with a wireless charging pad, although that does sacrifice a little bit in your center arm console, but that's why you have this secret storage compartment over here. It is leather wrapped. It's pretty soft to rest your elbow, a little bit more of that copper aluminum bezel all around it. Now moving up above you, this is one of the first Nissan vehicles to have this digital rear view camera mirror, which is a very welcome feature. But what's a little bit odd here is when you click this menu button, take a look at that software. It just looks totally different than anything you find anywhere else in this vehicle. It's nice that you can customize the features, but it just almost looks like an aftermarket part when you compare it to some of the color schemes and the software they use here. This looks like an entirely different piece of machinery, but it's forgivable. It's just a little bit quirky of a feature. Now, up above you over here, you do have your touch sensitive controls for your lighting, and then you do have a large panoramic sunroof with a pretty decent sunshade to block out all the heat, and this sunroof does open, so that's kind of the nice functionality. It's not just a fixed pane glass, and it gives you a nice, bright, airy feel inside of the cabin. Now, jumping into the second row, same nice use of materials that you found in the first row. Soft touch material up here, some more blue suede, an extension of your Kamiko design, although this one isn't backlit. You also have some more blue leather over here, a little cup holder slot, and then an extension of your 10-speaker Bose audio system. Taking a look at these seats, they're just as nice as the first row, leather wrap. You also have an adjustable recline over here. If you're going on a longer road trip, you can kind of kick back and relax. Over here, you've got a little soft arm console with 2 cup holders, and then I do like how this has the flat loading floor because this is an electric powertrain, so you've got your battery located underneath here. Jumping inside, Nissan says you have about 37 inches of legroom behind the first row. It's a pretty decent amount of space. Like I said, this is a compact crossover on the outside, but on the inside, this is closer to a mid-size crossover. I also like the design of the headrest of the driver and passenger seat, and then heated seats are standard on a lot of trim levels. Of course, this Platinum one being the top of the line, you've got heated seats back here, more of that wood grain material. You got air vents, 2 USB ports, and then because this center arm console for the first row is a little bit more concave in its design, you can actually fit an adult here in the middle and not have their feet kind of straddling left and right. You can kind of keep them centered over here, so you could probably realistically fit 3 adults in the second row. And then in terms of headroom, I'm 5'9", and I've got a couple inches above me, so a pretty decent amount of space back here. All right, now jumping into the trunk, this vehicle does come with the hands-free lift gate system as long as the key is in your pocket. And it's a pretty decent amount of space back here. So Nissan says you have about 22.8 cubic feet of space behind the second row, and you've got a little bit of a storage compartment over here along with the left-hand side. You have this what Nissan calls divide and hide cargo system. So it's kind of this 2-tier setup where you could obviously store some items over here. In this case, this vehicle chose to put the charging cable, and then you can actually store this kind of vertically as long as you slide it into those slots on the left and the right-hand side, and that way you can divide your cargo. Back here, you have a little bit less space, and you have a fix-a-flat kit over there. Now, you do have some lighting on the left and the right-hand side, along with some grocery hooks, and then if you fold down the second row, Nissan says you have 59.7 cubic feet of space behind the first row. This is also a removable tonneau cover. You can just unclip it over here and pull it out of the vehicle. All right, now in terms of warranty, you get a standard 3-year, 36,000 mile bumper-to-bumper limited warranty. You get a 5-year, 60,000 mile powertrain warranty, and then Nissan offers an 8-year, 100,000 mile warranty on the battery. Okay, next up, let's get behind the wheel and see how it feels to drive in the Ariya. First off, I want to show you the key over here. This is your typical Nissan key. You have your lock, unlock, your panic buttons, your automatic liftgate, and it's a little bit light in the hands. I wish it was a little bit heftier, but they've been using this on a lot of their models, and it's pretty okay. Also, I should mention, I think you have an option to have the Nissan app where you can climate control the vehicle before you get inside of it. So that's a nice feature that Nissan includes with the purchase of every single Ariya. Now, turning this vehicle on, of course, it makes no sound because it's an electric vehicle, but it does have this nice startup graphic on both the infotainment screen and the gauge cluster. Let's see how this thing drives. Now, one of the first things I want to mention is the maneuverability of this vehicle surprised me. You know, like I said, on the inside, it feels like it's a pretty large vehicle, especially with this flat floor over here for the driver and passenger. It makes it feel very spacious. But in terms of maneuverability here, the turning circle on this thing, it's very impressive. It turns more like even a subcompact crossover than a compact crossover, even though its proportions are similar to like a RAV4 or maybe even a little bit smaller. It is very, very easy to understand the dimensions of this vehicle and makes it very nice for, you know, tight parking spots or city driving. Now, in regards to the ride quality here, it's pretty average. I will say it's a little bit more comfortable than the Tesla Model Y, but it's probably similar to the Ford Mustang Mach E. Maybe the Mach E is just a little bit softer, especially if you have the magnetic ride suspension, but this is perfectly fine. It's not something that I would ever complain about. You could easily drive this on longer road trips and not feel, you know, beat up after the end of your trip, especially with these zero gravity seats. Now in regards to acceleration here, we're gonna gun it. And it is quick. As you can tell by it moving my camera over here, this thing is plenty quick for 99% of the people out there. I mean, 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds is nothing to balk at. I mean, this is a very, very quick vehicle, and it delivers that acceleration very smoothly. It's kind of this gradual acceleration. It definitely prioritizes luxuriousness over sportiness, and you can tell that by taking a corner, you kind of feel the weight. This doesn't stay as planted as the Model Y or the Mach E. It's not meant to do that. It's meant to be more luxurious and comfortable than it is sporty. But let's put this into the sport mode, and we're going to accelerate on this freeway on-ramp. We are at 20. And we're at 70. So very, very quick to accelerate still. There's still no problems. Again, I have to adjust my camera because the G-forces. But yeah, this is perfectly fine for passing people on the freeway. You really don't need anything quicker than this. In terms of road noise, it's very quiet in city traffic. On the freeway, you hear a little bit more of that, maybe a little bit more than I would like. But again, I have to remember this isn't actually a luxury car. This is a Nissan that happens to have some very luxurious upscale features. So I would say this is perfectly fine for a vehicle of this price point. It's pretty much on par with some of the other electric competition. Now, one feature I really like here is Nissan's ProPilot Assist 2.0. It actually just activated, and I know this because it shows blue all over the gauge cluster display and on my head-up display. And when it glows blue, it means that you have hands-free driving on the freeway. So right now, as long as I'm staring at the road, I can take my hands off the steering wheel and this thing will steer itself. Now, I drove this vehicle the other day in some pretty bad rainy conditions, and the ProPilot Assist essentially did not work. It worked for a second and then it shut off. It told me to put my hands on the steering wheel. So it has to be a nice, sunny, clear day like it is today. But other than that, this is an awesome system, and this is on par with Chevy Super Cruise, Ford's Blue Cruise system. You know, it works really cool. It's kind of crazy. It's a really neat party trick, but if you're the type of person that takes interstates pretty often, I think the majority of interstates in the United States are pre-mapped. See, right now it just shut off and it said hands on the wheel, HD map under maintenance. And so it's not a perfect system, but it is cool that they've included that. It surprises me because Nissan isn't necessarily at the forefront of self-driving, and the fact that this car comes with that is pretty cool. But even if that ProPilot Assist 2.0 is shut off, you still have adaptive cruise control and lane centering, and you know that it's active when it has green on the screen. And in the green mode, you know, as long as you have your hands on the steering wheel or a little bit of pressure on it, it will also keep you centered inside of the lane, just not as advanced as the ProPilot Assist 2.0. One thing that I have a little bit of a complaint with the ProPilot Assist 2.0 is lane changing is not automatic. So you have to actually push this button on the steering wheel and then you can activate the lane change, but it doesn't actually change lanes for you, which is odd because Kia and Mercedes, which have kind of a more simpler adaptive cruise control system where you cannot do any hands-free driving at this time, they will change lanes for you when you tap on the blinker, or in Mercedes' case, it will change lanes for you even without your permission. Like, it will just start doing it if the vehicle in front of you is going slow. So I'm a little confused why Nissan didn't integrate that, since they have essentially more advanced technology to begin with. But nonetheless, you can change lanes if you need to by pushing the button over here, and then you can activate the lane change yourself. And then in regards to safety features, this vehicle does come with a lot of those standards. So you've got blind spot monitoring, you've got, like I said, adaptive cruise control, emergency braking, you've got parking sensors. Everything pretty much comes on every single trim level, aside from this ProPilot Assist 2.0 with that hands-free driving. That is only included on the higher trim levels. All right, so here we are getting on a freeway on-ramp. We're gonna do another little pull here. Gotta make sure I'm in sport mode first. And it looks like I am. So 3, 2, 1. That's cool. That is pretty quick. And then in sport mode, this vehicle will also pipe in a little bit of sound as well, and you can shut that off if you put it into standard mode. But it's plenty quick. It's very fun to drive if you're doing 0 to 60 quick accelerations. And I'd be very interested to see like a high performance version of the Ariya that can better compete with the Model Y performance and the Mach E GT, because I think at that point you would have a very upscale interior, but also have the driving chops to back up a very performance-oriented SUV. Now, in regards to the regen braking, you have this button over here on the center arm console that says E-Step, and that is what turns on the regen. And there's only really one level of regen braking, and it's not super strong. It's kind of just okay. You don't have any type of settings inside of the infotainment to increase the regen braking. It's either on or off, and every time you turn the vehicle on and off, it will shut off the regen braking. So it's not like Nissan really prioritizes that. The regen braking in this vehicle is definitely not as aggressive as the Rivian or even the Tesla Model Y. It's kind of more average. It's more of the regular day-to-day driving type of regen on some of those other models. So what are my overall thoughts on the Nissan Ariya, and would I recommend it? Well, I still believe that this is a very underrated vehicle. I don't think enough people who are cross-shopping a Mustang Mach E or Tesla Model Y or Kia EV6 are comparing it to this vehicle, and I think they should. Now, the one drawback here is the price. I think Tesla is so competitive with their pricing right now that, you know, you can get a Model Y performance for possibly even lower than this platinum trim level of the Nissan Ariya. But at the same time, Nissan is offering quite a bit of incentives, and if you lease this vehicle or if you find a 2023 model year, you could probably get it for a very competitive price. On the website, it might not seem like it's affordable, but when you get into the dealerships, you might be able to get almost as good of a price as the Tesla Model Y. And I think in some ways this car does things better. Its interior is definitely more luxurious. I like the Pro Pilot Assist 2.0. It's definitely more comfortable than the Model Y, and it's not as minimalistic. At the same time, there are some drawbacks. It's not as quick to charge. The supercharger network is coming, but it's questionable how quick it will charge on that network as well. And it also doesn't have the latest and greatest software. I think Tesla software is some of the best in the industry, and this is good. It's just not as good, but it's definitely a viable option. There's fewer of these on the roads. You're going to be driving in something a little bit more unique, a little bit more striking on the outside, and it's a great choice for those of you in the market for an EV crossover. But what are your thoughts on the Nissan Ariya? Would you take this over some of the competition, and why? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, if you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for all of the weekly car videos. Also, check me out on all the social media at Shwazy_. Until next time, everybody, I hope you stay Shwazy, stay healthy, have a wonderful day.